Hi, I'm Logan Kemper, and in this video we're going to be making a build of our Unity game. So up until this point, you've likely only been running your Unity game inside the Unity editor, as in it requires the editor application to run it all. But after this video, you're going to be able to compile your game from this editor application into a standalone build, something that can run alongside any other app on your computer. So one important note I want to mention before we get started is that any build you make for this class that you'll be submitting is going to be a Windows build, meant to run on a Windows desktop operating system. If you are making your game on a Windows PC, that should not be a problem at all. You will be able to follow this video verbatim. If you are on a Mac, however, there's going to be one extra step, which is you're going to be first making a Mac build to test that it works, but then you're going to be submitting a Windows build because your games will be graded on a Windows computer. I'll show you how to do that. So the very first thing I want you to do is ensure that in the scenes that you plan on building into your game, you have the application controller component somewhere attached to any game object within the game somewhere. So that will allow us to quit the game just by pressing escape, which will feel a lot better, a lot more graceful than having to like force quit the application or quit it from Task Manager or something like that. So I just want you to have this application controller component on a game object in the scene with the quit game on escape checkbox turned on. And you should have that in all of the scenes you want to use. Okay, speaking of those scenes, we need to specify which scenes are going to be built into our game. So to do that, we're going to go File, Build Profiles. Then at the top of the list here, we'll see this scene list. So by default, it usually just puts in the sample scene. So we don't want to build that. Instead, we want to build the scenes that we intend to. So for this example, I'm just going to use the example side scroller scene. So I can drag that in. To remove a scene, you can right click, remove selection. You can click this button, which will just add the currently open one. That can be useful as well. You can uncheck these on an individual basis, and you'll see the build order, this number here on the right, starting at 0 and counting up from there. So if we uncheck the sample scene, then this example side scroller scene becomes the first item at index 0, and it'll count up from there. So any scene that you do want in your game should be checked on here and should have a number assigned to it. And any scene you do not should either be removed or unchecked. Make sure that the scene that you want the game to open to, as in the first one you see, is at the top in the 0 position. Okay, once you've done that, I want you to come over to the Windows platform over here. And this is going to assume that you're on a PC. We'll cover Mac in a sec. So once you've selected that, I want you to click on Player Settings. So this will bring up our Player Settings window of the project settings. Most of these settings are going to be sort of confusing and alien to you if this is your first time. The good news is you don't need to worry about most of these. There are a lot of settings in here. I want you to just keep them all the way they are. I do want you to double check that under resolution and presentation, you have this set the way you want. So I recommend you do full screen window, default is native resolution, and just keep these default settings. You absolutely could do a windowed, as in like a smaller window, you know, like this, as opposed to something that isn't full screen. But that can introduce other problems. So I think your best bet is just to set it to full screen window, unless you know what you're doing. All right. We can X out of that. So to build, let's just quickly verify that architecture is set to Intel 64. Build is set to local machine. All of these can be checked off. Compression method, it doesn't really matter. Default or LZ4 are both fine. Don't worry about this setting. Next, we can go ahead and click build here. So when you click build, it'll open up a directory on your computer. Unity has a tendency to open up the project folder for your game here. I strongly do not recommend you build into your project file. It'll make it difficult to find. It'll make it difficult to make revisions. Really don't recommend this. Instead, you should navigate somewhere that you'll remember, so like your desktop or documents folder, and create a new folder. I'm just going to do it in downloads here. So I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to title this test build or something like that. And then I'm going to click into that folder and select it, and that will begin the build process. The first time you make a build, it will probably take a while. This one just took, as you can see, 4 seconds from the console. For you, it might be longer. If you have a fast computer, it might take 30 seconds. If you have an older or slower computer, it might take 5 minutes. But subsequent builds will be much faster, so don't despair if the first one takes a long time. Once you've built, you will see likely these 6 items. Sometimes you'll get a 7th item that will have, it'll say like, do not ship or something along those lines. That one is not necessary, but we do need these 6. So what we need is the title of your game, .exe, this Unity crash handler, the Unity player, linked library, this underscore data folder, D3D12, and mono bleeding edge. When you submit your build, we're going to need all of these. Do not just turn in your .exe file. We need all of these items. But before we get ahead of ourselves, we should test. We should launch our game and make sure it behaves as we expect it to. So on Windows here, I'm just going to double click on the executable. There is a chance that Windows Firewall will make you like give a password to open it for the first time. Don't worry about that. Anyway, it looks like our game launched correctly. So I know that this build works, but you do not know that your build works. This is extremely important. Play through your entire game. Play through your entire game a couple times. Make sure that everything works in this build how it did in the editor. It is not super common, but not super unlikely either, that something will misbehave in this final build. And you're going to want to know that. You're going to want to troubleshoot it before you turn it in. Anyway, so let's say I've done that. I've played through my game. Everything is working as I expect. I'm now going to quit it by pressing escape. If I can't quit by pressing escape, that means I did not have my application controller component in the scene, in which case I'd have to quit it by doing Alt F4 or whatever other way around. So once you've confirmed that this works correctly, what I want you to do is take this file, or all 6 of these files, which should be neatly arranged in a folder like this, and move it to a different computer and play it there. It is a really good idea to have redundancy in your testing. Real video games, major video games often go through many, many rounds of quality assurance before they ever get into players' hands. So if you have another computer, test it on that computer. If you have a friend, and even better if they have a different computer, maybe a different version of the operating system, different hardware, that's even better if you get them to test it. So to do that, what I want you to do is just select your file, compress it to a zip file, and then this will be a portable file you'll be able to send, put on a thumb drive, stick in Google Drive, however else you want to get it around. But I really do encourage you to test it on at least 2 computers before you turn it in. Because if something goes wrong on my computer when I'm grading your assignment, how do I know that it works on yours and not mine? So, really cannot emphasize this enough. Okay, so to reiterate, I want you to test your game thoroughly and then make a Windows build, zip it up into a compressed folder like this, make sure it has all 6 of these files, and then you can turn it in. Here I am on a Mac, just to make this part of the process a little bit more clear for those of you on a Mac. So just like on Windows, we can go File in the menu bar, then Build Profiles. Under Scene List, let's just verify that the correct scenes are in there. Then we're going to go under macOS to make our Mac build. As a reminder, we are not turning in this Mac build, we're just using it to test. So make sure that under architecture, you go with just the default, whether you're on an Apple Silicon Mac or an Intel Mac, it doesn't matter, just whichever it has by default. Don't worry about the other settings, and we can go ahead and press build. It's going to open in our project folder. Once again, I do not recommend you build here. Instead, I'm going to navigate to downloads, and then I just made a folder called test build. We can save it in there. We will call it our game, whatever the name of your game is, and I will click save. And it looks like it has finished building. So it generated 2 files. This example project, burst debug information, do not ship. Don't worry about that. You can just delete that. And the other thing is going to be the .app file. On Macs, you have this .app file, which is kind of like all of those 6 items on a Windows build, just sort of compressed together. Functionally very similar. As a matter of fact, you can actually right-click Show Package Contents, and you'll have many of the same pieces in here, but it is a little bit tidier on a Mac here. Let's go ahead and launch this game to make sure it works. Okay, and go ahead, verify that your game works as you expect it to. Do not turn in this .app. You now need to make a Windows version of your game to submit. So I'm going to create a new folder. We'll call this Windows Build. And then back in our build profiles, we need to check to make sure we have the necessary modules to build for Windows. So in this case, I do not, just so that I could show you. So if you don't, you'll see this install with Unity Hub. Click that, and you will see that down this list, Windows Build Support Mono is selected. So you're going to have to go ahead and install that. All right, it looks like that is done installing. Once you've installed this new module, you will have to restart your Unity editor. So go ahead and do that now. Okay, the editor has restarted. So now the Windows platform is highlighted. However, we can't build for Windows until we switch to this platform. So to do that, you'll just click this button. Switching platform can take a little while because it's going to need to perform some adjustments to a lot of the files in your game. Similar to building, the first time you do this will likely take longer than subsequent times you do this. So don't worry about it if it takes a while. Looks like that's done, so we can go ahead and make our build. Like before, we'll just make sure Intel 64-bit is selected. We can set the compression method, not really a big deal either way. And we can go ahead and press build. Going to navigate to our Windows build folder. We'll call this our game Windows version. Save. It has built. So these files should all look familiar. We do not need this example project do not ship file like before, so you can just move that to trash, but these other 6 files are all necessary. So you won't be able to run this on your Mac, but hopefully you take these files, give them to a friend of yours with a Windows computer, have them test it, make sure it works. Maybe find one of your classmates who is on Windows, see if they will test your game for you. And once you've done that, you can right-click the folder and then compress it to a zip file. And that is going to be what you will be turning in. A little bit more complicated on Macs, but not too bad. You just need to make sure that you are testing it on a Windows computer. So a little bit more complex on a Mac, but not so bad, especially if you have a Windows computer handy. And of course, if you're on a Linux computer, then I think you can figure this out without my help. Okay, I will see you in the next one.